I had a quick question. I have a PDF that I can share. Am I able to put that in the chat and send it out to the participants?
Yes, absolutely. If you want to, do you want to drop it in while you're talking? Or do you want us to do it after?
Whatever is easiest.
All right, well, if you want to drop it in like right as you're talking, so they know that that one goes, because we've got a couple other links that we're going to drop in there too. So that one would be perfect to go when you start talking. That would be great.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Does she need co-hosting abilities? I think. Yeah, I think co-hosting for maybe
not
Maddie
to drop
and
the link, but I will make her a co-host. But anybody can drop a link.
okay. I don't. You can see my Zoom knowledge here.
Maddie, if you want to share it to me, I can take care of making sure it gets in the chat as well.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions before we start here?
I think Annie is co-hosting too.
Oh, thank you.
She's the last one. And then when Paulo jumps on, which is probably in a couple minutes, him. I think unfortunately you're the only one who can do it as host.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Thanks for reminding me. All right, well, it is 3:30, so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, I'll admit everyone. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. So we have a little task for you in the chat. If you would put your name and your school or organization and grade levels or types of learning groups you work with, so we can all get to know each other a little bit, that would be great.
We also invite you to include your favorite lesson or coral reef, favorite lesson around coral, sorry, or a favorite coral reef you like to visit. Great, we've got new friends joining. For those who just arrived, we're introducing ourselves in the chat with your name, school, or organization. You include your island, and then maybe a favorite lesson around coral reefs or a favorite coral reef you enjoy visiting. And maybe we'll get started in a minute or so.
And while we're waiting for other people to join, I'm going to go ahead and put a poll onto the Zoom. We'd love to get some responses from everybody out there.
Yeah, we're getting some quite concerned responses. Alarmed. I'm not sure if everyone can see the results, can they? Can all of our participants see the poll results?
You have all different levels of experience. Oh, some people have used a COA card before.
So Laura, does it allow you an option to display?
After I end the poll, I believe there will be.
Oh, okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, so we'll
Making
give
sure everyone
everybody
has access to the poll.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe another minute, and then we'll go ahead and show the results.
Exciting. We have Janice from Campbell High School, Julie from Kauai, Dive Master. Welcome, Lehua. Life Science Kumu and Kai Project Kumu at Halau Kumana. Wow. Yeah, no worries about your camera. And then a bunch of our climate fellows are here. And just by way of introductions, welcome. I'm Debbie Milliken, and I'm one of the NOAA Climate Fellows this year, along with Laura.
Aloha, everyone. I'm Laura Cummings. I know it says Science Hawaii, but my name is Laura Cummings, and I'm glad that everybody's here. About another 30 seconds to finish up the poll, and then I'll display the results.
Yep. I'm excited to see Gail has joined us from Hawaii Science Teacher Association, the communication director. She says Kaneohe Bay Sandbar. It's her favorite coral reef. Katie Watanabe is the curriculum coordinator at Malama Aina Foundation. Fun. Sorry, I'm just reading them out loud because it's fun to read them. Welcome, everyone. So glad you're here. Elizabeth Showalter. Thanks. All right. What do we got, Laura?
Okay, so when we were talking about our level of concern of the health of the coral reefs in Hawaii, nobody is not concerned. One person is somewhat concerned. Most people are quite concerned, and then we have some that are alarmed. The level of expertise, we're all across the board here. We got some beginners, some with some experience, quite a bit of experience, and we do have quite a few experts here. Even though it only says one, I know that there are more experts than that on the line. COA cards, not too many people have used them before. That's great because we're going to introduce them to you today. And then we've got all different responses for why you're here today. So learning from experts in the field, bringing ideas back, and interested in attending the Hanauma Bay activity, requesting hands-on materials, and then it'll be interesting to see what this other is. So thank you so much for participating in that. Debbie, want to take it away?
Yeah, great. You can go to the next slide because I'm going to introduce our first speaker for today, Dr. Thomas Oliver. He's a research ecologist at NOAA with NOAA's Pacific Island Fisheries Science Center, which is here on the island of Oahu. So welcome to all of our friends from all of our islands. Dr. Oliver focuses on understanding the forces that drive ecological and physiological resilience of coral reefs and coral reef ecosystems across the Pacific Ocean. We're so grateful to have your expertise here with us today. Dr. Oliver, I welcome you, and I think you're going to share your screen. So go ahead and get started.
That's the plan. I totally am. Thank you guys very much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. Aloha kako to everybody who's coming from from Oahu and from the neighbor islands. And I really hope this is a conversation and starts many more conversations. I'm probably going to talk for 20 minutes or so. I love talking. I have a tendency to natter on, so I'm going to try to keep some close watch on my time so that we still have time to talk to each other in the breakout rooms and stuff. Let me go ahead and try sharing. And there we go.
Yeah, Tom, when you see me wave my arms at you, you'll know. Stop. I'm just kidding. I'll try to do my best. And then I wanted to share with everyone, please feel free to hang on to your questions, type them in the chat. We'll definitely make time for it, as well as after Tom speaks, we'll have a few breakout rooms. One of them, Tom will be in to ask further or respond to further questions, as well as we have two other guests that will be joining today. Thanks.
Sounds good. So today for my talk, I want to tell you guys a little bit about, first off, everybody can see the slide? Yes, looks like, good. So I want to tell you a little bit about my passion, what has been my professional passion my entire life, for about 20 years of me being a grown-up working in this field, really trying to understand the environmental challenges that corals face, and particularly from a lens of climate change. And more of this is understanding the scale of the challenges that we have, and also understanding the ways that we can help corals and coral reefs encounter those changes. So let me just start by saying, really, the Finding Reef Resilience is the title today, and that's a large part of my job. And what that does boil down to is tracking climate change effects on coral reefs to empower coral management and restoration. And jumping forward, I want to start, I'm going to give you a little bit of some of the science that we've been doing, but I also want to give you a little sense of my perspective on this whole thing. And to do that, I want to start really at the beginning of my professional journey, which happened here. This place is Ofu Island Lagoon in American Samoa. And above the water, it's a beautiful remote Pacific island. Below the water, it is home to some beautiful, functional, diverse reefs. But it also is a very special place because if you take a look on the left-hand side there, this is looking from the top of the mountain down on Ofu. You can see these back reef pools in Ofu. And that's why this was the site of my PhD research. And those pools get really, really hot, right? They approach 34, sometimes 35 degrees Celsius, which is in the 90s, like it's very hot. Temperatures that no self-respecting coral would get caught alive in. Usually corals die in those conditions. But as you can see, that picture underneath is in this lagoon, and they are thriving, right? In those harsh conditions. So my PhD really focused on how is that possible? What is going on? What makes this place special? And how can this special place make us think differently of other places, right? And really what it boils down to, it was a lot of work, a lot of genetics, a lot of physiology. You can see us on the right-hand side there, setting up stress testing labs right on the beach with materials flown in. And what it came down to was just this acknowledging that corals are extremely tough. Corals have a huge variability in what they're able to tolerate. And to get them to tolerate these conditions is just a question of evolution, right? The corals in Ofu have been dealing with this for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they have adapted to those conditions and they've done it well. And that's basically what the science shows. But how they've done it there raises the question of how we can expect coral populations elsewhere to do it as the whole world heats up. But starting from that point starts me in a pretty optimistic place, thinking about the challenges reefs are facing right now as a evolutionary challenge, not just a story of devastation, but how do you embrace change and how can these reefs tackle that change as well? That's where I started, and this is where I am now. How it started, how it's going. I am now at Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center. I joined this group in about 2015. I'm in the Ecosystem Sciences Division, what's called now the Archipelagic Research Program in the Corals group. It's a multi-headed beast, but there I get to devote my time to studying and tracking the status and trends of US coral reef ecosystems at this wonderful facility in Pearl Harbor that, as you can see right behind it, gives us really great access to the NOAA white ships that take us all around the Central Pacific to get up close and personal with these Pacific reefs in order to develop sound science, right? To do the scientific investigation necessary to inform management about how we as humans can help these ecosystems and these organisms deal with the challenges that they're facing. And there's a whole diversity of ways folks at NOAA do this. Not this particular job, but all of the breadth of the jobs at NOAA. My job is not actually on this list. You can see the scientific diver, my friend Paulo, is maybe one of the closest snapshots of what I do. But There's many different things. Specifically, my job sort of centers around this program, what's called the National Coral Reef Monitoring Program, which was born into law with the Coral Reef Conservation Act in about the year 2000. And so we've been doing some version of it since the year 2000. And you can see sort of the timeline on the left there, where basically every 3 years or so, we visit a major archipelago in the Central Pacific. So last time we were working in the main Hawaiian Islands and the Northwest Hawaiian Islands was 2018. Then, you know, a couple years went by, there was some stuff that happened, and the pandemic shut down our expeditionary work for about 2 years. But we were lucky enough this year to get back out to Guam and the Marianas in 2022. And coming up next year, we're going to be back on our normal cycle, focusing on the Pacific remote island areas and American Samoa for 23. And then in 2024, we'll be right back here in the Hawaiian archipelago, collecting long-term monitoring data of, again, the status and trends of US coral reef ecosystems. What does that actually mean? Boiling it as far down as I can, we go out and we count corals, right? So we take a stratified random approach where we basically know where the coral reef is, and then we randomly drop divers in hundreds of sites per year across the archipelago. And we do transects where we study the demography of corals, the diversity of corals, the condition of corals, bleaching, disease, that sort of stuff. We have colleagues that do the same thing, but instead of focusing on the benthos, they focus on the fish, and they're counting, getting biomass estimates, on, you know, understanding the diversity of the reef fish. And we have colleagues that also are tracking climate drivers. So that's temperature and ocean acidification primarily, among other things. But they're really interested in what are the forces on the reef, and particularly how is the reef doing in terms of accretion and erosion is their primary focus. And then finally, we try to do all of this using novel tools. Now, this is where we expect the video to be a little staccatic, but what you're looking at here is some of the new tools we're using that allow us to take thousands of photos of a reef, freeze that reef in time, build a 3D model of it, and then learn all sorts of stuff from that 3D model. And it's particularly exciting when you can see, as in this site, we have the same areas imaged over time. And what you just watched was a particular set of corals go through the 2015 bleaching event off the coast of Maui. So we're trying to access and understand the processes in these reefs using a whole bunch of different methods. And once we collect all that data, analyze that data, and try to understand what's happening, it is our goal to partner with the folks that are actually out on the reefs doing the management, setting policy, and really trying to usher reefs through the challenges that they're facing. And who that is depends on where exactly we're talking about, but there's a big diversity of management partners that we work with. And that information happens in a lot of one-to-one, but we also roll out peer-reviewed publications for the scientific literature, as well as these sort of more informative status reports and resilience assessments that can allow you to basically not dig through literature, but say, here is exactly the information that you need really in an accessible way to move management ahead. So that's where I came from, where I come from now. Now I'm going to move into the science chat a little bit. I'm happy to take any questions along the way. If you guys have any short questions about that, we can interrupt. If you'd like me to keep on going and let's get into the science, I can do that. Sounds like a thumbs up for keeping on going.
Well, I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but that's a great reminder. If you do have any, feel free.
This is, again, meant to be a discussion. So, okay, if you're going to take a single message from this talk, I would like it to be this one. Global threats to the reefs are serious and getting worse, right? This is a climate fellow discussion, and what we're talking about is that climate impact on reefs. It is big, and we'll talk about exactly how big. But the other underlying message is, while it is really important that we mitigate that climate effect and we do what we can as a global society, there are things we can do to meet in the middle, right? And that's why I say local management matters. So let's first talk about the scale of this problem, right? What are we talking about? So we're talking about anthropogenic carbon, the source of one of the primary drivers of reef challenge right now is the warming of the ocean and the acidifying of the ocean. Where did that come from? Well, if we look at going off of the global carbon budget, it's a year out of date now. They have updated it. There is a 2021 version. But for about 170 years worth of data suggests that the source of the problem really is fossil fuel and land use emissions, right? That in total mobilized 650 gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere. Okay, that's a big number. What does that mean? It's a really big number, and it's worth taking a minute to talk about what it means. So this is a slide from XKCD, a really great web comic where they like to throw up some data. And what this is literally is each little box is not a gigaton, is a megaton. So it's a million metric tons, whereas a gigaton is a billion metric tons. And what it's showing you is all of the Earth's land mammals by weight. In the middle, that sort of dark gray is all of the humans, right? And put all of us together this year, and we're talking about 0.4 gigatons. If you take all of the other land mammals, not including us, that's about 1 gigaton. Okay? Mind-bogglingly large number, 1 gigaton. Now, let's go back to the previous slide. What we've done over the last 170 years is take a gas, CO2, and put 650 gigatons of carbon, right, in the form of a gas into the atmosphere. It's a huge problem, and it's having huge effects. And one way to really visualize what these effects are is you can look at not just what went up, but what came down, right? So the other side of the graph is where did this mobilized carbon end up? And you can see about 40% of it is still up there. It is in the atmosphere. About 30% of it is in the ocean. And about a quarter of it has been back on land. So either in the form of trees or soil carbon or something, right? Was demobilized effectively. But it is this stuff that's left in the atmosphere that is what's driving global warming. And is this stuff that's left in the ocean is what's driving ocean acidification. Okay. And of course, we really care about that in the context of climate. We can get into ocean acidification on another day. I took all those slides out. We can talk about it. Just looking at it from an ocean warming perspective, this is just a plot of some projected values. The black line is real data, not real as in it's already occurred. And the lines moving to the right from that are where we're headed. Where we had hoped to be headed is the purple line, the Paris Agreement. Where it looks like we're headed is somewhere substantially higher than that. This is a challenge for reefs for a number of reasons. The biggest one being, of course, coral bleaching. But it's not a challenge that operates in a vacuum, right? Corals are facing a number of threats, what I would call the long-term and the global threats like bleaching, acidification, and disease, which is often tied in, especially to bleaching patterns and heat stress, as well as a bunch of more local challenges like poor water quality, overfishing, crown of thorns, etc. Sort of things that happen at a much more local scale. They are both important. And today I'm going to walk through an example that really focuses on the interaction between heat stress and sort of a combination of overfishing and or nutrient pollution that often manifests as overgrowth by macroalgae. But before I do that, I want to just run everybody through some details about what bleaching is. Really, bleaching is not necessarily death, right? So bleaching is you take a healthy coral. That healthy coral is an animal that has a bunch of algae, often called zooxanthellae, living inside that tissue, right? If you take that healthy coral and you increase water temperatures, even a relatively small amount, about a degree above local summertime temperatures, and you get it up there for days or weeks, that coral can bleach as that symbiosis between the animal and the algae breaks down. And then you have what is the characteristic bleached coral, this white skeleton, where there's still a layer of tissue on top of the white skeleton. So it looks very vivid, just this white thing, but it doesn't mean that it's dead. And it's not a death sentence in the point that if that temperature returns to normal over a slightly longer time scale of weeks to months, that coral can brown up again and can recover its symbionts, right? However, if that temperature stress is prolonged over the time scale of days to weeks, it can progress and that coral can die, right? And we've seen that happen a fair amount. And we've seen it happen right here in the main Hawaiian Islands. So what this is looking at is a timeline on the x-axis, and on the y-axis, we're looking at a measure of heat stress. We call it degree heating weeks, because it's literally how many degrees are you above that stressful temperature for how many weeks. So if your degree heating week is 2, you could be 1 degree above for 2 weeks or 2 degrees above for 1 week, right? And so this is just showing how this degree heating week has progressed since we started collecting satellite data in 1985. And you can see a major change happened sometime around 2014, is that we started having pretty major bleaching events. The first one ever recorded, at least in Western scientific literature, happened here in 1996. You can see there's a little blip there, and a bunch of corals in Kaneohe Bay bleached white, and some folks wrote a paper about it. Aside from that event, we really didn't see bleaching here until 2014, when we get a seasonal bleaching index just above 4. That dotted yellow line means corals that were expected to bleach but not die very much. Mass bleaching, no mass death. That red dotted line above it is where we expect to see mass mortality. So in 14 and 15, we saw back-to-back bleaching events, where the second event was major. Then the major effects took a few years off, but we saw, again, another major bleaching event just in 2019. So we went from 30 years of really minor impact to all of a sudden very frequent major impacts. It's a new phenomenon here. And how bad was it? Well, it was pretty bad. In 2015, 2019 was not as bad, I should say that, even though the number looks bad on the chart. But in 2015, we lost over 30% of coral cover in the state. If you convert that to area, we lost an area of live coral roughly equivalent to the area of Maui. It's a really big effect. And we have seen some recovery since then, right? Especially in West Maui, on Lanai, but there are other areas such as the west coast of Hawaii where we have not seen major recovery, even though they suffered major impacts. So it's happened here, and it's been a really big deal. And it's going to continue to be a really big deal moving forward. And moving forward, we can actually project about when this is going to be a real major issue. And one of the ways we sort of put a break on that is we say, what year do we expect to see annual severe bleaching? Literally those bleaching conditions every single year. And we are expecting that to happen as early as 2030 for Papahanaumokuakea. And if we zoom in on the main Hawaiian Islands, on the windward sides of the islands, some areas are on that same 2035 timescale, and on the leeward side of the islands, we buy about 20 years from there. So I show you this slide again to highlight that this is a major stress. This is a big deal. Having major bleaching events every year is not a place that reefs are set up and evolved to deal with. But there's a ray of hope on this slide in particular, where if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, having different sides of the island have different paths to that stress opens up evolutionary options for us in an exciting way. I'll leave that piece there, as I know I've been talking for some time now. I do want to talk about some of the science piece that also talks about local effects. So I was recently lucky enough to be on an author team for a paper that made it into Science, and for us scientists, it's a big deal for us. But what's more exciting is that this was a global analysis of looking at the change in corals after a bleaching event across the entire world, basically. So using global coral reef data. And the main take home of the paper is that change in coral cover after a marine heat wave depends on the severity of the heat wave, which we kind of take for granted, right? But also local conditions, and especially macroalgal cover. And let me walk you through what that means. That if in this slide you see macroalgal cover, how much macroalgae there is on the x-axis. And often corals and algae are often kind of duking it out to be dominant on a reef, right? And the change in coral cover is when you have a marine heat wave, when it gets hot, do you get more or less coral the next year, right? You would think less, and you'd generally be right. But the first thing to notice is all of these points, there's a lot of variability. There are some places that are still doing well, even in the face of stress. I do want to point though that let's look at this blue line. What the results showed is that in minor heat waves, right? If your stress is not that bad, when macroalgal cover goes up, the effect of that stress is worse. And this is even more dramatic when the heat gets really turned up. When you have a major heat wave, the more macroalgae you have, the more decline you see in coral, right? And this is the way that we stated it in the paper. I like to think about it from this direction though, which suggests that if you are managing your reefs well and keeping the water clean, keeping herbivorous fish on your reef, and reducing the amount of macroalgae on that reef, you have the potential to moderate the effect of stress, right? So when the bleaching hits, it's not as bad if you're dealing with the local patterns, right? So that if you've got the reefs that is still functionally, it's got herbivores there, it's got macroalgae there, and so the reef can take a hit, but not basically stay down. And that's what we call differential resilience. And I'm wrapping up towards the end here. Are we still good on time?
Yeah, I'd say you have 5 minutes.
5 minutes, it's about right. I got
Yep.
that. Right. The good news is that this pattern of differential resilience, the idea of finding areas that can take the stress back, like those corals back in Ofu Lagoon, our tools for finding them are getting dramatically better. So let's talk about what it is, what resilience is when I say that word. The definition that we use at NOAA is that it refers to the capacity of a system to resist and recover from disturbance and maintain the structure and function to provide ecosystem services. We frequently use a ball and cup metaphor to explain it. So if you look at this ball sitting in B, you try to push that ball out of there, it's going to pop right back where it was. Whereas the ball over in C, if you nudge it, it's going to move, right? That's differential resilience. The green ball is where we would like our reefs to be, that they can take environmental insults and resist and recover. And we'd like them not to be showing major effects of the bleaching, right? So our questions are what sites have resisted or recovered, what colonies have resisted or recovered, and what environmental drivers, ecological patterns, demographic processes, or genetic traits correlate with that. That's primarily what I spend. And then how can we use that information to guide management and restoration? And we have been doing more and more of this using the kind of models that I showed you at the beginning. I'm going to zip through this a bit, but we are traditionally have looked at corals at this scale. But with the advent of these new technologies, we can capture and take home pictures of the reef and models of the reef at a much broader scale. And it lets us look at a whole bunch of new and exciting metrics that we just really wouldn't have gotten before. Things about how the reef is working. And we do this by taking bunches of pictures, building out these models. And this is a reef in Palmyra. And you can just see what these models can do, right? They can show us the structure. They can show us all of these different corals. And with a little bit of time, we can do repeatedly dive on this reef. What's particularly cool is when we line them up and go back to the same place over time. What you're looking at is time moving from 2014 to 2018 in Kahekili and Maui. And you can see in 2015, that's the bleaching event. And we can look at individual corals that we're going to come back to and see how they respond and recover or not. And we are doing this work all over the Pacific, establishing these plots and really building models about how these reefs are dealing with change. And we've seen that one already, but it really is getting down to the scale of differential resilience, from the archipelago scale, where we work, to individual colonies, really tracking what we call vital rates, recruitment, growth, and death at these colony scales, building those into demographic models, and providing, especially from the point of view of restoration, what I call our strong coral address book, where we're tracking colony performance literally at the level of colonies. And if you want to know where is the coral that is growing the fastest that survived the 2015 event in the main Hawaiian Islands, I can tell you down to a centimeter for at least some subset of them, which is pretty fun. Anyway, on that, I think that is me done. I'm happy to take any questions and move into the breakout groups.
Wow, right on time. Thanks, Tom. Wonderful.
Sure.
Beautiful images. It's exciting, the technology. Yep, I see some claps out there. I see a few questions in the chat. We have a few minutes for that before we move into the breakout. So Joyce is asking, after a bleaching event, how long does it take for a coral rebound? If it takes more than, 1 year, annual bleaching events pose an even greater threat. Is this a true statement?
That is a true statement. That is honestly why many coral biologists view the onset of annual severe bleaching. Folks have put that synonymous with the death of reefs.
Yeah.
I don't always count myself among that number, though, in that, again, it comes back to Ofu, right? That there are corals living in tough places to survive, that usually pay a cost of some sort to do so. So they're not selected for in normal times, right? But those guys exist, they're around. So yeah, like the effects of major bleaching events can be very destructive. And that is absolutely true. When it comes to what the kinds of stuff we're talking about these days is how to support wild populations in the process of becoming more resistant to stress, so they don't react the third or fourth time bleaching shows up the same way they did the first time, right? It's a thin thread of hope, but it's there.
That sort of adapted resilience. That must give you some sense of optimism for, I hesitate to call it hope, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's realistic optimism, which is often not very optimistic. I expect there to be major effects. But like the analysis I'm doing right now is looking back over the last 20 years of all of our data, that whole series that I showed you, breaking up into little zones across the entire Pacific and looking at which areas have showed either maintenance or recovery versus a decline. And it's roughly 60% of them have shown some form of decline. And about 30% of them, though, scattered all over the place. It's not like it's one place. About 30% of these little zones have shown either maintenance or recovery over the last 20 years. I expect the next 20 years to be harder, for sure. But I expect differential resilience to be a thing. I expect some areas to continue to be resilient. And if we figure out how and why, we can hopefully change the trajectory of the other 60%.
Great. Okay, Matt Fisher has a question. Can you do any open ocean stress tests versus in tanks, or do you have to wait for natural events and kind of track it from there? I think we're talking about, what was it? Chasing Coral has a...
Chasing Coral, yeah. I mean, I'll say that was a major focus of my work. Before I basically, I mean, it's basically like a great arc for my whole research arc, is that I spent years and years developing, building a stress test system. We actually, the modern version of it is called CBAS, and it's being used all over the world to basically in situ stress test corals to establish what their thermal tolerances are. One of the beautiful things about coral is they're clonal, so you can like snip off the equivalent of their pinky and test it, and it'll tell you something about the rest of the whole body that is still thriving out in the wild. We can absolutely do that. We also can survey large swaths of the Pacific and watch natural events happen. And I think if we're doing both of those things, and potentially doing both of those things with some of the same corals, which is what we're trying to do with some of my colleagues, we can really build a better understanding of what those tolerances are, how they're changing with time, and how they face real life stress events. I'm happy to get into the weeds there. There's a lot more I could talk about the values of one strategy over another. I'm very much though a both and kind of guy. Yes is the answer to your question.
Great. Okay. Well, along with that, those of you, I think, Tom, you have to stop sharing just real quick, if you don't mind.
I will stop sharing as soon as I find my mouth.
Our next phase. And I'm sure some of you have more questions. And if you do, we're going to give you that option right now. But we also want to entice you with a couple of other options. So just so you know, we have about 15 minutes now that we can deep dive with 3 of our wonderful NOAA researchers, and you'll get a chance to choose which room to join in just a second. And then we'll all come back together, and we have 2 more. We have a lot of guest speakers today. They're experts who are going to share a bit more about what you can do in your classroom, and then about our Hawai'i or event that we're going to hold on November 12th at Hanauma Bay. We hope you can join us. So stay tuned for those after the breakout sessions. Don't go away. You just heard from Tom. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about his work, or you have some questions about the presentation you just heard, you'll select room number 1 in just a minute. And in room 2, we're going to have Dr. Paulo Maurin. And if he's here, right? Paulo. I was wondering if you could take a minute to share a bit about what you'll be doing and sharing with us in your session.
Sure. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
So we'll be diving into accessing and working with the NOAA data. Tom mentioned basically the concept of degree heating wicks and thermal stress. So I'll be guiding you how to go to Coral Reef Watch, obtain the data, what it means, unpack it, and then educational resources to use that data into the classroom yourself.
Wonderful. Yeah, and just to preface, this is the time
Debbie,
we're educating.
you're muted.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. So this is the time also for us educators, as we work alongside these experts and learn from them, start to think about, how will you introduce with this to your students in your class at the grade level that you work with, and be sure to, ask and talk with one another about that. So in the 3rd room, Justin will be sharing about some NOAA lessons called the Coral Checkup Lessons. And we'll have one of our climate fellows in all of the rooms, but one of our climate fellows who has used those lessons will be in room 3. Laura, are we ready to go?
Sure. I don't know if Justin wants to say anything about what he'll be.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Aloha, my kako. Glad to be here. And honestly, I'm just, as an educator, I was trying to take all of the amazing work that all these other experts are doing and turn it into sort of a narrative that works in the classroom and sort of walks students step by step through understanding what this data is, how to use it, and use some of the really cool tools that are out there with NOAA and some NOAA partners. For those of you who don't sit in on our session, we can share how to access those lessons later.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that too. Good point. So if you obviously you can't make all 3 sessions, we'll definitely be sharing out from each of those rooms, and hopefully we'll be able to record in the rooms too and hang on to that. So I think Laura's making the.
Yep, here we go, guys. So again, room 1 is Tom Oliver, room 2 is Dr. Maurin, and room 3 is Justin Umholtz. So go ahead and choose your room.
And we'll be bringing you back in about a little less than 15 minutes now. We'll give you a 2-minute warning.
Hey, as a non-Zoom user, can you tell me how to get to room 3?
Sure, Justin, I'll just stick you there.
Thank you.
Do you see it? Oh, Tom, are you still in the main room? And feel free to choose any room. Maddie, feel free to choose any room.
Could you also stick me in 3?
Sure, no problem.
Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, that's totally fine.
I'm interested in room 3 also, please.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Can you see that?
Could you send Doug to 3 also? Thanks.
Doug, absolutely. There you go.
Right on. Appreciate it.
Sure. How about anybody else? Janice or Julie or Matt or Sarah?
Yeah, Julie, I'd like to go to room 3, please.
Gotcha. There you go. Is there anybody else I can help get to a room? Julie or Janice or Sarah or Matthew? Hi,
Sorry,
Joanne.
Laura.
No worries.
We have 2 people from our school going, and so we both ended up in the same room, and we were
Okay.
like, okay, let's split. So can I please
Okay.
get put into number 3 room
Let me
with Justin?
find you. Yes.
So sorry.
No worries. You're totally fine.
We're trying to divide and conquer, but then we wanted the same thing.
Okay, Joanna, room 3, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, no worries. There you go.
Thank you.
And Matthew or Janice, if you're on, if you want me to help you move to a room, just let me know.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm transferring over to the phone and that's giving me a little problems. Could you move me? Actually, honestly, into any of the rooms, they all sounded great.
Okay.
Maybe
So,
the third room, the education room.
okay, great. Here you go.
Thank you so much.
No worries, Matthew. Hello, welcome back. We'll just wait for everybody to get here and then we'll introduce our next speaker. Okay, just a couple more seconds and then we'll have everybody back. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us again in the main room. Just a reminder to make sure you're on mute.
Some great conversations in our room. I hope it went well in the others.
That's fantastic.
Wow, wonderful.
And if anybody needs more information, please reach out to us at the end of the Zoom and we can make sure that we put you in touch with the right people. All right, so we're really lucky because we have even more experts. Some of you may know Maddie from our summer workshop if you attended the workshop in July. Maddie is with the Institute of Marine Biology, the Coastal Resilience Lab, or should I say the Coastal Resist and Recover Lab. So Maddie, I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to share your screen if you want to share your screen, or we'll just spotlight you.
Yeah, I don't have anything to share. I'm doing a live demonstration.
Here's what we'll do. I'll stop sharing and then we'll go ahead and spotlight you.
All right, thank you.
All right, when you're ready.
Okay. Hi everyone, thank you for that introduction. So my name is Maddie Sherman. I'm the project manager for the Coral Resilience Lab at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology. And a little bit about the Coral Resilience Lab. So we're affiliated with the University of Hawaii, and we aim to study the mechanisms that drive resilience in corals. So we have a bunch of postdoctoral researchers that are looking at the nitty-gritty molecular biology that focuses on those drivers of coral resilience. But I am on the other side of things, and I do a lot of outreach and education. So that's one of my roles within the lab, is managing the outreach and education. And we have developed a coral bleaching kit that uses real coral skeletons that we've used in our labs for experiments. So you may have received, or you may receive one of these in the future. And some of them might be on these plugs. So these plugs are exactly what we've used in our lab. And it's kind of used to identify where this coral came from. We have a bunch of data about that coral. Yeah. And so when I use these with in the classroom with students, I kind of like to tell them that when they pick a piece of coral from this kit, that they're holding a little piece of science in their hand. And that's always a fun thing to say. But the bleaching kit is very straightforward, fairly easy to use, and it just helps to kind of visualize coral bleaching in the classroom with using actual real corals, not living corals, but real coral skeletons. So we have some of our coral skeletons that we've painted. About half of them are painted with a special thermochromic paint. And this thermochromic paint changes when it's exposed to higher temperatures. And we learned earlier in the webinar about the mechanisms of coral bleaching. So this is helping to again, visualize that. So I like to always have a little introduction about corals and why they bleach. And then I lead and go into the demonstration. But I always have a couple of corals that I like to show, pass around, and they can see where all the little polyps were. This one was tagged at some point, which is always fun if we get little tagged corals like that. But anyway, so after I give my little brief introduction about corals and coral bleaching, that's when the activity starts. So I always have students go around and pick one coral, and then I talk about some of the diversity of the corals that they might find within their kit. So here we have rice coral, and all of these corals that we have in our kits are common reef building species here in Kaneohe Bay. because that's primarily what we're looking at and studying. So we have 3 different species of coral here. So we have our rice coral, our lace coral, and then our finger coral. And just by looking at them, I like to have the students kind of point out the differences within the corals, and they can see that, yeah, every coral kind of has its own little personality. But anyway, so they'll go ahead and they'll pick their little coral, and then they're instructed to drop their coral into a jar or beaker. I've used beakers in the past to make it a little more sciencey. So we have our ambient water, and then they'll take their little coral fragment and then carefully drop that into the water and observe if there's any change within the coral. And some of them like to say that there is. The only change is that there might be little bubbles, but I instruct them, look for dramatic color changes within the coral. So there's no change. And then they'll all drop their little fragments in here. And then this is when I introduce them to our jar of hot water. So I just use a electric tea kettle, boil some water at the start of my lesson. And then by the time I need it, it's nice and hot. And so I'll carefully pour some warm water in here. And then using a pair of barbecue tongs, we will take those corals that were in the ambient water, take our coral in here, and then instruct your students to carefully drop the coral into the jar of hot water, and then watch as that coral bleaches. So that is the big ooh-ah moment of the lesson. That's when all the students kind of go crazy. But as I mentioned before, about only half of the corals were painted with that special paint. So that means that the other half have just a normal paint and will not actually exhibit that bleaching in the jar. And this is because these are our super corals, our resilient corals. So these are what we aim to study within the Coral Resilience Lab. And I always ask them, why do you think it's important to look for the positive when we also have a negative in here? And when we see pictures of corals bleached, usually there's a colony or there's a large portion of that reef that has bleached. But we always ask, what about the part that didn't bleach? So that's exactly what we're looking for here, is why did this one not bleach? And how can we use that as a tool for restoration? And that's exactly what one of our projects in the lab is, Restore with Resilience. So we're actually looking for these naturally resilient corals and hoping to restore reefs all across the state of Hawaii with these resilient corals. And then from there, you can actually put this coral back. And this is a good lesson to teach that what we mentioned earlier, that not all corals that have bleached is a death sentence. So if you actually put the bleached coral back into the ambient water, it slowly starts to get its symbionts back, but it's much, much slower than when it bleached in this jar. And that's also a really good lesson to teach them about, is that the recovery period is typically a lot longer than what it would take to bleach. So that's the demonstration in a nutshell. It's a really fun visual tool to use in your classrooms or any sort of learning environment. Yeah. And then if anyone has any questions about the bleaching kit, I'll put my email in the chat. But I'm also going to be talking about the koa card. So this is the koa card, and it was developed by a research lab here at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology. So Ku'ulei Rogers and the Coral Reef Ecology Lab developed this, and it took them a couple years. But pretty much the background of the koa card is it is a coral health assessment tool, and anyone can use this. So we as researchers use it. It's a citizen science tool, and it's really accessible to be able to put your data into their database, which I will get to in a bit. But again, a little bit of background about the COA card. So they got data from 6 common species here on the windward side of Oahu, and they put a couple of fragments from those corals under a stress test, and then they did a bunch of crazy visual data collection that got this spectrum of colors. And these are, if you use them under the water, sorry, losing my train of thought. These cards are completely waterproof, they're weatherproof, they've been tested a bunch of times for that. But on the back of the card, it tells you the instructions on how to survey the area that you're in. So there's 2 different survey types that you can use. And then the PDF file that you should be receiving with your card explains everything. So, and it also links to where you can report. So it's pacayus.org/cc, and that takes you to the database where you can log all of your findings. So getting into how to use it. So you can survey with the transect method, so 10 corals along a transect every 3 to 30 feet, or just do 20 random colonies while you're snorkeling, scuba diving, etc. And then take note of the shape of the coral and the morphology, and then hold it right up to the coral and spin it around until you find the correct number that would match the same color as that coral that you're surveying. And then log that onto a data sheet or a slate, and then put that into the website. Thank you, that just got linked. Awesome. Yeah, and then it's a general database, and so it's used to monitor corals within that area over time. And if there's a predicted bleaching event, we have that data from citizens and from other researchers just within this one area that we can always go back to and assess the general health of that area. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you so much for listening.
I didn't see any questions in the chat. Does anybody have anything? I guess one of the thing, yeah, thank you so much. Maddie, one of the things I think for teachers is sort of organizing a field trip around doing a COA survey. Do you have examples of classes or groups of students that have been successful?
Yeah, good question. So I recently ran a mentorship program for 10 high school students across the state of Hawaii, and one of those was we were doing COA card surveys, and we just did them really close to shore. But Ku'ule Rogers, who's the principal investigator of the Coral Reef Ecology Lab, was actually the one who was kind of leading that activity. So I was very lucky and got it right from the source. But pretty much she set out these transects, and like I said, really close to shore. And then we had principal data sheets and introduced the COA card to the students beforehand, and then they went into the field. It really shallow, so they're just like hovering over the colonies and were able to use the COA card. So there have been, that's one example, and we've also used the COA cards in our Restore with Resilience effort. So rather than going out into the field, when we transport our corals back in for our community events, we've had community members on shore try and get that information using the COA card.
Nice. I know you have some lessons and some pre-work to do in the classrooms for teachers that might be helpful. I wonder too, for those who may not be able to bring students out into the ocean to use the COA cards, do you have examples that they could line up with over images or something? Like
That's,
a
yeah,
virtual.
that's something that I'm in the works of developing. So I'm hoping to have that available fairly soon, but it will be a part of another lesson plan that we've been developing. Yeah.
Great,
And
thanks.
then yeah.
Tom has a question, I think.
I was just going to say that, Maddie, I think that's super cool. And I think the COA card exercise, if you can't get out in the field, I think it would work really well with the banners. I don't know that we've talked about the banners with everybody here, but we've been turning and I know Debbie knows about them, but Leon has been working on developing from some of our models, these 3-foot by 15-foot banners of a reef that you can roll out on the floor. And you could absolutely take the COA cards and go and, work with all those. I think that would be a pretty, yeah, exactly. That's
right
the picture
here.
of it right there.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That's such a good point. Yeah.
Wonderful. I mean, they wouldn't be able to add to your database, but at least they could understand what it would take to collect, or, could find other opportunities. Any other questions? Yeah, thanks, Justin. He's just saying that the map viewer feature that he posted the link in there has good potential for student engagement. I think the other opportunity, of course, is looking at the data. I don't know if it's readily available, Maddie, for teachers to work with. That might be interesting as well.
I have a point to make. It's Liz. Hi.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. I just want to let you know that very recently, we had one of Maddie's teammates come on out to our school. I do K-6 STEM. And the kids loved it. They did the choral, the heated choral, and the lesson and the slideshow and everything that goes along with it was really, really informative. And the kids get to see how coral eats and how coral is a plant and an animal and a rock all together, and then just the whole thing. It was a really, really excellent presentation, and it was a lot of hands-on stuff. So if you can't do the other things and you have younger kids, I would highly recommend seeing if you guys can figure out a time for them to come to see you at your school. So
yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Liz.
Hello, Liz.
Yeah,
we have people available to come to your classroom and present the lessons that we've developed. So I'll put my email in the chat, but if anyone is interested in having someone come and present, we're more than happy to schedule something with you.
Excellent, Maddie. Thank you for dropping your email in there. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Mahalo. Okay, so moving on to an opportunity that we're able to offer. I'm so sorry, but for Oahu folks, or if you're able to come over, that is the Saturday after Veterans Day. So it is a holiday on Friday, if that helps anyone wants to come to Oahu. Yes, I know, Trish, we wanted to set up opportunities on Outer Islands. Stay tuned. We may be able to build some capacity for that shortly, but and we'll see how this one goes. So we're super excited that Annie Rosa is here today to share with us what will be happening at that Huaka'i on November 12th. Annie is the Marine Science Education Specialist with Hawaii Sea Grant Center of Excellence in Marine Science Education. And she has served with the Hanauma Bay Education Program and supports their marine education and outreach efforts from Hawaii Sea Grant. We're so excited that she could be here and tell us what's going to be going on at that wonderful day, Saturday, November 12th.
Hey, aloha kako, everyone. Thanks for having a chance for me to share. Would love to have you folks, if you're able, to join us at Hanauma Bay on the 12th and actually be able to try out the koa cards. And as an example of a resilient area, some of the aspects like that Hanauma Bay has is the cool water circulation coming inside of the bay. After different bleaching events like 2014, 2015, it did have recovery, pretty good recovery. And it also, of course, because it's a protected area, has all the herbivores in there that are in the bay. So it's a good example, accessible place for you to come in terms of just shallow coral reef environment. So we'd love for you to be able to come and participate with us and try out using the KOA cards. We would be doing it in kind of the 20 random points survey style instead of putting transect lines, just because we share the space with a lot of folks at Hanauma Bay. So it's a really good chance to do that. I'll just share just a couple slides with you folks, just a second. Oh, it's not letting me share, but that's okay. I also wanted to share with you folks, part of the invitation to the Hawai'i is just to offer you a oli that I wrote about Hanauma Bay. And part of it is, we want to try to connect the culture to the science. And the intention of this oli basically is to talk about resilience, to talk about the people coming back to Hanauma Bay, the children coming back to Hanauma Bay, those of us reconnecting educators back to Hanauma Bay. So it's talking about returning and just having abundance and health, and those are all things that we come together in terms of coral reef resilience. So I'll just offer that to you as an invitation to come to the bay. Aloha e nā puaohua, e ia no ke kaiku o no Hanauma, he olu I ka makani o ihi laua kea, a puia ke kaina kua maunga, a hiki mai nā pua o ke iaone, he lehi mai nā kupuna mai, aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. And so the intention behind it was written to be able to answer those that come into Hanauma Bay that practice protocol. But the intention behind it is has a lot to do with resilience. The pua meaning the children, but also meaning, the young fish returning. And so that's really our hope in connecting you folks with coming out to Hanauma Bay, is to give it as an example of a place, hopeful place where you can see abundance of marine life. You can see a place where there's been recovery and resilience. There's even coral heads that are so close to shore that, our kiddos that do the shoreline walks, they can see one particular big coral head. And that's a good one to track because it's unusual. It's in such shallow water, and it makes you think, okay, why did this particular one bounce back? So just wanted to invite you folks to have that opportunity with us. It'll be 8:30 to 12:30. So we will cover introduction to Hanauma Bay. We'll see the required educational video, and we'll talk about, how to connect your schools to coming on a field trip with Hanauma Bay. And that's one of our goals, is to get, more of our local students to be able to come and learn with us at the Bay. And then we'll go down and give everybody a chance to try out the KOA cards in the field. And then we'll come back up to the upper area, the picnic area, be able to gather together and kind of compare our data and what we've come up with, and talk about being able to come back to the Bay. So just wanted to invite everybody to come out with us. And there is a sign up that Debbie's posting in the chat. So you can go ahead and register for that opportunity. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. But yeah, we look forward to you having your classes come. And we're real easy to reach if you just want to arrange a field trip. It's just hanauma@hawaii.edu. And I'll post that in the chat as well. So mahalo. Thanks, everybody.
Mahalo, Annie. I wonder, are you able to share that, Oli? Because it's kind of beautiful.
Oh yeah, and I can share that with you. And anybody wants to learn it too. Happy to share when you guys visit.
And then the link that the Google form link, sign up to attend at Hanauma Bay. If there's space available, you can bring family members. Just put that in there. We'll get back to you soon. And also you can sign up to receive the coral kit that Maddie shared and the KOA cards. So let us know. Those will be available for pickup on all the islands. So even if you can't come to Hanauma Bay or you're on a different island, please use that form to let us know how we can support you.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. So just a reminder what to bring that day if you are signing up for the November 12th event. Bring your Hawaii state ID so you can get in for free. It's just $1 for parking. If you are wearing sunscreen, please make sure that it is reef safe. Water and snacks, snorkel gear, underwater photography gear, GoPros, that kind of thing if you have that. Are there any more questions?
And if you folks can't make it out to Hanauma Bay, we're also happy to do virtual connection with you or to come out to your schools as well, because sometimes it's hard to make it out there. So feel free to contact us for visits to schools and virtual.
Yeah, thanks for that. How is the schedule looking for in-person visits? Are you filling it fast?
Yeah, so it's starting to fill up a little bit more. And we're really excited to have everybody back because it's been a while. So yeah.
I'm glad you're excited. The fish may not be, but in the coral, but
and we have less people nowadays. So we're
That's
only
right.
about 1,500 a day. So it's not as crowded as it used to be.
Annie, this is Gail Peterson. Hi.
Hi.
I'm
to see you on here.
Good to see. Well, you don't see me, but I can make that happen. I just wondering, I'm here today as a retiree, but also for Hawaii Science Teaching Association. Is there a possibility for a weekend field trip for teachers to come before they bring their classes?
Oh yeah, sure. We could set that up for you if you want to do a pre-visit with teachers. We'd love to set that up.
Yeah, it makes it better when they know what they're doing before they bring 100 kids with them. Okay.
Most definitely. Yeah.
I will reach.
Let me know.
Okay. Thank you. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
And Gail, invite them to, November 12th. That's part of the reason why we're going as well. Bring teachers there.
Okay. I'll talk to you, or you want me to? I'll talk to you, and we can just add the link to the next HOSTA newsletter.
Yeah, maybe we'll see how it goes for
for the people that are here.
Yeah, to make sure. Yep, thank you. Yep.
Yeah, do sign up soon. I think there's the permit is for 40 people, is that right, Annie? So just in terms of capacity, like try to sign up soon to make sure you have a spot.
Is that 40 including family members? If someone were to bring a child or?
It is, but we can, if you start to get lots of signups, we can look at that too.
Okay, thanks. That's great. All right. So exciting. Can't wait to see all you there. Go ahead, Laura.
All right, yeah, so we're approaching 5 o'clock and we want to make sure that we honor everyone's time. Some of you are already part of our online Hawaii Climate Change Hui. If not, we'll drop a link in the chat and you can join us. This is a great place to connect and share lessons and ideas and reflections and anything climate related. So we'd love you to join our online Hawaii Climate Change Hui on what schools could be platform. This is kind of what it looks like. So we have 80 members already and it's growing. So we'd love for you to be part of our online community. Let's see what else. So we kind of went over this, but we do have some coral parts that you can borrow, these banners. And then of course, we'll get you the koa cards and the fragments that Maddie talked about if you're interested in that. And then we will have our Hawaii Climate Educator Fellows across the state. So when you're going to pick up your fragments or your koa cards, we do have people on every island and we can make sure that you get those. So just to end things, does anybody have any last minute questions or anything they want to share or reflection?
Thanks, Laura, and thanks everyone for coming today.
Can I just put a huge plug, a huge mahalo to Laura and Debbie, who kind of organized all this and putting all this on. A lot of work to put this together behind the scenes, and then also all the Climate Educator Fellows who are on today as well. So Joyce, I think Missy was here for a while. Yeah, so I appreciate everyone, and Shale as well too. So thank you so much. They're doing incredible work here, and I just want to make sure I recognize that.
Well, don't be too humbled, Leon. This is your idea, your initiative, and you're making this happen. So a big mahalo to you, actually. Thank you so much for the opportunity bring us together and to build this community that I'm sure is going to continue to build in the future. And we just want to mahalo our speakers today.
Thank you
It's
so much.
incredible that all of you jumped in and were willing to join us.
Yes, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you so much.
Yes, and on your way out, if you have a word that you're feeling for our educators or our participants, you know, are you inspired, or you know, something that you plan to do next, you can throw that in the chat. That would help us to give us a little bit of, you know, formative assessment here of how we're doing. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, and sorry, Janice, you got cut off in that breakout. We'd love to, you know, get you connected to Tom. I know you had some great questions. Bye, Liz. Yeah, a whole lot of learning today. Thanks, Joyce. I think we were geeking out in our session. So cool.